Hello and welcome to Athena Women Today. Thank you to my loyal followers who've been supporting me on this journey. And if you're new here, I hope you stay. You'll be learning about what it takes to be a confident woman in today's society. And on each episode, I'm joined by incredible, diverse and successful women who are sharing their stories of confidence, resilience and growth. And on this episode, Mindset Matters, Building Confidence Through Emotional Resilience, I'm joined by a diamond with many facets, a therapist, an author, a jazz performer, an artist, a songwriter. I'm joined by Claire McAllister.
We are connected, made of the same stuff. No need for friction. Can you see it, feel it?
Thank you for having me, Maria. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Claire. And just diving straight in, what is confidence? Is it a behaviour? Is it a personality trait? Or is it something else?
I think confidence is when you know yourself and you trust yourself and you can be with yourself, really. I think that's what confidence is.
So if we rewind the clock back on your journey, you mentioned be with yourself. Would you say that there was a time in your life that you could be with yourself? Or is this something that you've had to learn?
I think that's something I've had to learn. I don't think that came naturally at all. I think, like so many of us, we compare ourselves with other people, you know, trying to be more like that person or that person, not really knowing who you are yourself. And I think that can take you down all sorts of paths. And then you sort of lose yourself, which is what happened to me, I would say. And then the journey, I guess, is coming back to yourself, right? It's finding that way back, which usually comes with pain, suffering, things going wrong, problems, challenges, which kind of make us reset.
I guess it's a meandering river, really, is what you're describing. What moment can you describe in your life where you felt that your self-worth or your confidence was completely gone?
I don't think I can pinpoint a moment. I think that for me, it was more of a sense of never really quite feeling me, if that makes sense. It's almost like I could see other people seeming to be in themselves and being themselves. And I had this odd sense of not really knowing who I was or what I was about.
Right.
You know?
Yes. Yeah. Owning who you are.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of coming up against, for me, it was like coming up against painful points maybe that would make me look and sort of wonder what was happening and try and kind of put things together and make sense of it and be more myself. And then again, and then again, and then again. And then again. So I think it's a kind of continual process in a way.
And actually, when we met, I mean, you are a diamond with many facets. I think you're amazing. And when we met, I think you felt that you were quite separate. So you weren't really a whole diamond coming together. So you are a therapist, also a jazz performer, an author. And yet I think those are all in silo. I wonder whether many ladies can share that same experience that, you know, I guess you've got your mum hat, your wife hat, or, you know, your working professional is the same thing. Do you feel like you're coming together as one person, that you're owning who you are?
That's interesting. I think you do. You can feel like you're jumping from one role to another, one type of person doing one thing to another. And I think actually it's getting deeper and deeper within yourself that brings you the wholeness, which is a weird thing. It's almost like the more you can sink into who you are, everything that you meet, really, coming back, sort of questioning, having a curiosity as to what's happening and why you're reacting like that. And then it sort of takes you to what's underneath that, you know, and then you sort of go down that. It's almost like an inner journey. And I think that's what takes you to who you are underneath and brings it all together.
And back then, though, you didn't feel like you were together. But though when we met, grief was something that you were working through. And I'm sure there are other ladies that can resonate with this. Can we talk about grief and the impact that has on your confidence, on your self-worth?
Absolutely. And I think it is an important part of my journey, because I lost my mum very, very suddenly while I was at university. And I only found out 2 weeks before that she was unwell, and then she died. And that literally sent me off into another direction and took me many years, I think, to actually be able to feel that and process it. And that was my mum. So that was a big, big loss. But we have lots of smaller losses, as well through life, don't we? So doesn't mean that someone may have died that's important in your life, but maybe we've had other losses, like we've lost the career that we'd hoped for, or we couldn't have the children that we wanted, or the relationships, or even pets, whatever it is. Yeah, grief can take you to a really painful place because you don't have any power to change what's happened. There's nothing you can do. I think that's what's governed quite a lot of my journey, is not being able to process grief until later on. And then as I could feel things more and be with those feelings more, and it helped me relax into myself more, be myself more, and actually bring about more of a peace and a happiness, actually, bizarrely.
So not having processed grief properly and not knowing that you hadn't quite processed it, something was missing.
Yes.
And
100%.
You were searching for it, but you didn't really know what you were searching for.
Yeah.
In fact, you were a single mum and you moved to Spain. And that was quite an adventure and a brave thing to do. Did you make that choice again because you were searching for something and not knowing what that was?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always had this sort of connection with Spain and wanted to go and live there at some point. But I think that when I did that, it was probably, now is the good time to go, let's go, rather than really feeling it through and preparing for it. Again, it was, a little bit of a, is this right now? Do I do this now? And maybe not, who knows? But it didn't bring what I'd kind of hoped.
It didn't satisfy, didn't fulfill you. I wonder how many other ladies can resonate with that, where you're just jumping from one, you make quick decisions and you jump on one thing to the next. And actually, it could be even joining the gym and it only lasts a few weeks, or doing a course in something and then you actually quit. And actually then feeling like a failure because you've done that. And I know that that's quite an interesting topic, feeling like a failure. But I do think it's very natural, just making these choices and decisions and then not sticking to them. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think part of that is looking for that solution, that answer out there. And we're absolutely overwhelmed with information, advice, what other people are doing. So that can be quite a distraction and quite a noise in our lives. I've discovered that actually stopping all that and being with ourselves and being quiet with ourselves and listening to ourselves, then the answer becomes evident. But we have to almost get to that quiet point where we actually stop. But we're sort of our culture doesn't really kind of support that in a way. It's sort of where, if you're not feeling happy, buy this. If you're not feeling fulfilled, do this. If you're not happy in your relationship, go over there and get another one. Or there's so much out there. And I think it's quite difficult to say, no, I'm going to just stop and take some space and time and think about what I really need.
Is that validation as well? Is that almost, like you said there, a constant need to be made to feel happy? Is that seeking that validation? Oh, look what I've done, and then go and tell several people because you want that pat on the back, that dopamine, I feel happy now. Is it a bit like that?
I think it can be when we're a bit lost in ourselves and we don't quite know what we want. So therefore, like what we were saying before, when we're that looking outside of us instead of looking in, because all the answers are here, actually.
So Claire, what's the difference between validation and support? You've got a group of friends, you're on a journey, you want their support, but you don't need their validation. What's the difference?
I think it's often interesting to look at the words. Validation means value, doesn't it? And I think if we value ourselves, that's the most important thing. And the person that we're asking for that validation, do they value themselves? Or do they have their own insecurities about who they are? So we want support from people who value themselves and really get you and see you. And it may be that some people that are loved ones can't give us that support because they don't get what we're doing or what we're about. It all starts with how we view ourselves, how we see ourselves. And if we're not really valuing ourselves, but we're looking for like approval, kind of, oh yeah, we want everybody to say, you know, that's doesn't matter really at the end of the day, does it? Because it's you who's living your life, doing your thing. So it's got to sit right with you.
So how do you deal with that when, like you said, if you've got family members who are not so supportive, but you're on this incredible journey? How do you deal with the absence of support?
Yeah, it can be difficult. It's living with paradox, isn't it? You love this person and they love you, but in some way, they can't support you. They can't see what you're doing. So that's it. It's paradox. It's just being with that, really.
It's knowing that they can't. And they're not going to.
That's their journey's different. What we're feeling is about what's inside us. So, and I guess we just got to keep trying to explain to them. Hopefully they'll get it at some point and support us, but they may not.
They may not. So is that about being resilient with yourself? Because what if it's painful? And they could be the only people close to you? You'd love to have that support. You know that you're not going to get it. So how do you become resilient?
Yeah. I mean, it's the way we see the world, isn't it? That question you've just asked me is sort of saying, you know, somebody can't support you. How can you be resilient? It's almost like you've got two sides. So how can we see it without it being two sides? That person's got their issue. So we can still love someone. We can still love people, but we can't get each other. We can't be with them. Can't understand each other. But we still love them.
And I guess that goes back to also having people in your life that do get you, but we spoke about connections and fostering deep connections, emotional connections, emotional support. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have a partner that can give you that emotional support, that you can have a deep connection with, that's fantastic. You might have a friend or a family member that can give you that. What happens when it's your partner and you cannot connect with them at a deep level and you feel like they can't give you that support? What would you do then?
Depends what it is. Depends what it is. But, you know, we have to be true to ourselves. It's a difficult question. And I think it's a very personal how you respond to that, because for some, just loving that person and being that person is the most important thing. And they can put aside maybe what it is that's important to them. They can somehow put it aside. For others, it's like cutting off their breath. They can't because they can't live like that. And maybe that relationship has to stop and end.
Claire, have you experienced that? And how did you move past it?
Yeah, I have. It's a grieving, actually. For me, it just took me into a lot of grieving again, back to my old feeling of grief.
And of loss.
And loss. Great loss and disappointment. And it's not an easy place to be, because actually we just have to sit with that loss. Yeah, of course we can have support and friends and loved ones around and things that help us, but actually we have to sort of grieve that and move through that. And it can take us to quite a dark place where you can feel ever so low and not want to do anything and hopeless and despairing and at a loss. And who wants to feel like that? But actually, sitting with that and just not running away from it and just being with it. And that darkness, just let yourself be that, because it doesn't stay. Actually, what keeps that feeling continuing, that dark place, is when we try to push it away or distract ourselves. So if we can just be with it completely and allow ourselves to really grieve and feel that loss and that aloneness and that sense, of failure. Oh, here we go again, another loss. It doesn't last that long. And then we move through. We actually move through to something else.
And I guess because you identified, you lost your mum back in university, was it? It unblocked you. So what you're describing, moving past a relationship grievance, a loss, do you feel like you were able to move past that because you recognised the signs of grief and loss and you were able to sit with it?
Yes, I think so. I think you've got to have it once, like the full grief experience. Sounds awful, doesn't it? But you do come through it. But I think what's so hard is that we don't want to go there, because it's just uncomfortable and painful. And sometimes it feels like it's going on for quite a long time. But if we can get through that, it does move. They talk about the different stages of grief and, but very often people do get stuck and can get stuck for years and decades in one sort of area of it. But bizarrely, if we can be with each stage of it completely with ourselves, it moves through really quickly.
And actually, if we're talking about loss in terms of relationship, it's recognising when a relationship needs to come to an end because it doesn't serve you, and it's being brave enough to say no. And that really it didn't set off your journey, sorry. Actually, it was just one of the things that you unblocked. As I've come to know you, there have been a few things that you realised, you know what, I'm not happy with that. That's going to change. I'm not happy with that. That's going to change. And as you've passed each one of them, you've had more of an I am experience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, one of the positive offshoots of going through the grief, I realised that I needed to protect my own pain a bit more. Experience, rather than just glossing over it, pushing through, carrying on. It was like, actually, because in some cultures they actually honour their grief. It's like really given a place in their experience, and we tend not to do that so much in our culture. We tend to move on. And actually what happened was, by processing that grief, the offshoot of that was that I found that I could say no to things that I didn't feel comfortable with anymore, and that normally I would let slide, or I wasn't quite right about it. Just go, actually, no, that's not right for me. That was a big development for me, because I always felt I had to manage anything that was thrown at me, and I could actually realise my limitations and decide I didn't want to do something. So that was really important. Yeah.
So for the ladies who struggle to say no to things, we all multitask, like we're brilliant at multitasking. And some of us are natural empaths and we want to help our friends who are going through a tough time. But how do you say no, especially when you're an empath?
Well, our culture, I think, we're not brought up to put our needs first. It's seen as selfish, neglectful of other people. You must put people first, and of course we've got to do things for our friends and help other people, but at what cost? So if we're not seeing to our own needs, then it's not going to work out right. So I think we have to really look after ourselves, care for ourselves, put our needs first, and manage our friends around that. It might be explaining, well, I really want to help you this time, but I can't for the minute because I'm looking after this, or I need to do this, and then I will do this. So it's,
in terms of being an empath or someone who naturally deeply cares. So, for example, you come to me and you're really upset, something bad has happened, and I'm your close friend and I really want to support you, and I'm sitting with you and I'm listening. How do you then listen? But when you're an empath, you sort of take on a lot of those feelings, a lot of those emotions. How do you then process them through, let go of them, and carry on, and not live with somebody else's experience and feelings, and you're feeling the weight of it, especially if they're a close friend. And I guess that also would be the same in your job as a therapist. People come and talk to you. How do you leave that behind?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it becomes difficult or something has really triggered you, that's because of something within yourself that maybe needs looking at.
Right, that's interesting.
So as a therapist, you would then take that to supervision, or you would process that in whatever way is healthy and safe for you, so that you can go back and be there as a counsellor, therapist, with your client. I suppose similarly, with a friend, it's being honest with yourself. If you're getting angry with a friend, right, who's suffering, and you're supposed to be there with them, or you're getting irritated or something, there's something there that maybe you want that space to look at for yourself. Or if you're triggered and you're feeling upset, it's resonating with something you're experiencing.
So
yourself.
You're saying that you have a friend, you're in that moment with them, deeply care for them, what they're going through. But in order for it not to affect you, for you to carry that away over the course of the next week, and be completely consumed by their experiences, it is just about listening and then and checking your own feelings. Why is this making me feel this way? Why am I carrying this? This is not my problem. This is their problem. Why am I feeling so deeply about their problem? Is it about checking that?
Yeah, we can give too much of our energy, and we're going to exhaust ourselves. So if you're a parent and you're working and you've got a partner and there's things you're doing and you're trying to be all there for your friends, you can't,
Yes.
You can't be their mother, right? Unconditional mother in that. So what's making you feel that you have to
be a mother, right? That you're mothering everyone around you. Yeah.
What's
that
going on
all
there?
about? Let's talk about narcissism here. That was on the tip of my tongue. Narcissists. You might have somebody very close to you in your life that's a narcissist. I think first let's explain what is a narcissist for those that don't really understand what that is.
It's a form of control. It's when somebody makes you feel like you've done something wrong and that everything's twisted round so that you are disempowered and they are empowered, and they call the shots and it's your fault, or it can be quite subtle.
So if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, now a relationship could be a family member, could be a parent even, or your husband or wife or your best friend, and you suspect that they're a narcissist or you see narcissistic traits. And I wonder if that's two different things, someone who has narcissistic traits and someone who's a narcissist. But let's talk about the narcissist. Can they be fixed? Is that something that they can learn to stop being a narcissist? Or is it you're a narcissist, that's it, the end?
Well, possibly a narcissist won't look outside of themselves to see that they are, unless there's some awareness there. But if you're experiencing being with somebody who makes you feel bad, makes you feel wrong, makes you feel like it's your fault, it's the relationship actually, because the person who is suffering in that cannot suffer unless they actually believe what they're being told as maybe a bit true.
So you could be in a relationship with a narcissist, but if you're the one that is being controlled, that is saying yes, who is stuck in this relationship, is it about searching within yourself first Why am I accepting? Why am I staying? Why am I putting up with this? So it's asking yourself why first, rather than just pointing at them. They're making me do this. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, getting some support and help so that you can feel empowered, good about yourself and who you are, working on your own insecurities that are allowing someone else to overpower you and make you feel that way. Because that will just continue with other people until that's resolved in ourselves.
So, Claire, you are a therapist, a healer, but you're also a jazz performer, and there is very much a power in healing through your music, in your lyrics. Where does that come from? Where did your journey with music start?
Well, originally with my mother, who was a flautist, a professional flautist. My dad is a professional musician as well. So growing up, it was a classical world, really, hearing a lot of music and singing all the time, singing to stuff, you know, that I could hear on the radio. I sang in the school choir. And I think for me, it's just that expression of what you're feeling can come through the voice and the different sounds, and you know, that's been the way that I like to express myself, I think, through singing, and also through the lyrics. So I think being a therapist and being quite, you know, like philosophy as well, like what's underneath things, what brings joy, what's happening to us as humans, those kind of questions about life, I think, come through on the lyrics. I kind of write that sort of stuff. Putting that kind of thinking, combining it with music, is just a lovely expression of that side of things. Performing doesn't come easily to me. I find it quite a challenge, but there's a sort of a need to kind of get the music out there, and I think it's nice joining up with other people as well, collaborating. I've discovered collaboration, which is just lovely. And
in your latest song, you've just released it, called Connections, you can really hear in those lyrics where that comes from, that idea of where are we going on this journey. I think it is wearing your therapist hat too, asking those questions, healing through those lyrics. Another song I resonate with, Don't Speak. It's a fantastic song too. So your musical journey, where are you at with it now?
I've just started a collaboration with somebody who runs Discus Music, Martin Archer, and he has written an hour and 10 minutes of music, pretty much. So I'm going to be putting some melodies and lyrics to that and singing on that. And it's quite a different way to work. It's lovely. It's going to be quite a big project for me, but very different avenue again. And also, I've just started a new venture called New Forest Jazz and Arts, where I'm going to be putting on jazz events, jazz nights, and arts events as well near the New Forest.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Well done. I mean, it's fantastic that you've got, like we said at the beginning of this podcast, you're a diamond with many facets. I love the fact that you're a therapist by day and you're this incredible jazz performer by night, and hosting a venue as well, the New Forest. But tying those two worlds together, you're still healing through your music. I think that's wonderful. Well done. So Claire, how do you handle criticism or rejection? Now, this could be as a therapist or an author or an artist or a jazz performer, or for anybody watching this, all the ladies out there who've experienced criticism or rejection, how do you move past that?
On the music side, there's been lots of rejection, lots of actually sort of nothing. You know, it's not even criticism, it's like no response, or just no one's interested, no one listens, no one looks. I had one dark moment with that after I wrote my first album, and I was promised a review with London Jazz, and it didn't happen. And instead of just kind of, someone said to me later, why don't you just keep knocking on the door and persisting and asking? I thought, oh yeah, that would have been a sensible thing to do. But instead I took it as a personal affront because of where I was at in myself. I took it as, oh, not good enough. And I went into a bit of a downward spiral. Now, obviously we're still talking about the musical sort of side of things, but now I'm like, it's fine. I do what I do.
But is that because you are on a self-discovery journey, so you're learning more about yourself? What advice would you give ladies who are currently facing criticism and rejection, who might not be on a self-discovery journey? Should they seek out help, support from a friend, a therapist? How do they move past that?
Get some support, I would say, 100%. But you've got to get to the point that it literally does not matter what anyone thinks of what you're doing. Unless, obviously you're not harming or hurting yourself or harming anyone. But whether you're an artist, a musician, or you're not any of those, and you're just living the life in the way that feels good and right for you, and you're being true to yourself, that's good. You don't need someone to tick a box and say, oh yeah, you've like your maths homework, you've done it well. You don't need that.
Claire, how do you feel about the expression, fake it till you make it? Now, I confess, this is something I used to say, think about fake it till you make it. How do you feel about that expression?
Yeah, I used to agree with that, I think. And there is something in that, 100%, because psychologically, if you keep assuming, I remember my very first singing lesson, or no, it wasn't the first singing lesson, it was about performance technique. And the idea was assume that you can, and then it will become natural. So again, fake it till you make it. So there is something in that 100%. Your body and your mind will get used to doing something, and then it will start to feel natural. However, if you've got stuff underneath that, which is to do with your self-beliefs, messages about who you are that have been passed down from generation to generation, or that are still there, then it's a bit like sticking a plaster on, isn't it?
Because it's actually not a good thing to be fake. And these days we talk a lot about being authentic. We're two ladies on the couch in our authentic selves right here, right now. So can you describe what it feels like to be authentic? Because I'm sure there are many women out there who do put a mask on, who do fake it. How do you be your authentic self?
Really good question, isn't it? I really believe that we have to stop, come back into our bodies, into our breath, into the moment, take a couple of minutes. How are you feeling? Checking in with yourself. How are you feeling? And that is all good. There's nothing wrong with how you feel. I think one of the big things I find with clients is often this sense of they shouldn't be feeling that, right? And whatever you feel is absolutely okay and right, because there's a reason for it. And your body will reveal that. So I think it's coming away. At the beginning, you called it mindset matters, but in a way, actually, it's about your body. I think it's more about the body and the breath and what's happening. Are you sitting relaxed? Are you able to breathe? Are you feeling tense? And as soon as we kind of relax, then we can just get into our feelings, then we can be with ourselves, and then we are authentic.
Okay, so that leads us on to imposter syndrome, which came up in conversation in the last episode, Leading in Confidence, that episode. Imposter syndrome is a sense of, I shouldn't be doing this, or why am I doing this? I'm not qualified enough. I'm not pretty enough. And that's what we're talking about, just not feeling authentic. So how do you work through imposter syndrome?
I think this is a problem a lot of women have. And I think I'm going to broadly generalize here. Men often don't have that, and women do. And I think that we have lived in a patriarchal society for so long that we feel wrong if we feel empowered and we feel our full selves. And I think it's realizing that, putting ourselves in the context of where we've come from historically and what women back through the decades and the centuries have done and had to do before us to get us to a point where now we can sit on this couch, you and me, and speak our authentic selves freely, because it's many countries we can't do that even still, right, in this world. But remembering that it's been part of our culture to not be authentic self.
Right.
It's been part of our culture to not be the fullness of who we are. We're not brought up to do that.
But then social media's had a role in that. The internet's had a role in that. You're looking at pictures of beautiful women and you don't see yourself as that. Is that also the result of the internet, of social media? Not just, when you say culture, do you mean ethnic culture? Just mean
culture generally, the way we're brought up, society. We're not, schooling. It's no one person's fault. It's just the way it has been for a long time. Some places you get little pockets of it, don't you? I think where it's not, that isn't the case. But generally, we're not brought up to be the fullness of who we are and just be who we are, and that's good enough. We have to get qualifications, we have to get skills, we have to be many
overachievers.
Things. We have to achieve, we have to be this, we have to be that. Just to be ourselves can feel so unfamiliar to actually that's enough. You're just Maria. You are, even broader than that, beyond your name Maria, you are you and I am me, and that's okay. Finished.
Claire, we've spoken about quite a few things today. We've spoken about imposter syndrome, grief, actually sitting with yourself. What about those daily habits that help you to maintain your confidence and self-belief? Can you give us some advice? How do you do it? And what advice can you give us?
Yeah, I think if you can bring in some meditation or some time just with yourself to be really quiet. I start the day usually just before I even get up is just a few minutes, just kind of checking in with myself and just being with myself, seeing how I feel. If there's any anxiety or anything that's upsetting, or if I feel relaxed, if I feel well slept, and then checking in perhaps through the day as well, just having a stop here and there, think, how am I doing? I often maybe just read something first thing in the morning, uplifting, or pick an image or something that resonates with me and just kind of helps me focus. For me, I like doing that.
Also visualization. So if you've got a dream you're working towards, it's something that you've spoken to me about, Maria, your goal and your aspiration. Can you visualize yourself there? So would it also be about remembering that each day? That's where you want to get to.
Yeah, that's a really nice thing to do. But also, how are you feeling right now? What's happening with you right now? And just taking a slow start to the day if you can. Slowing down, having time, if you're working, you come back from work, instead of like getting straight out of the car, jumping in the house, just, have that slow time. Just
That's
stop.
Something that I'm quite bad at doing.
We all are.
We all are, because but also that's a way of processing things. So whether you've just, passed a test or an exam, or you've made a sale, I don't think we do stop. Like you say, we stop, we take a minute, we process the win. We just keep going, don't we? One thing after another.
We can be a bit like a production line, can't we?
Yeah.
And I think the more we can stop and the more we slow down, the more powerful we are, the more we do, the more we get done, actually.
That's brilliant. I would really love to ask you this question, Claire. How can introverts or socially anxious people build confidence in social settings? And this is going back to COVID, again, dare I say COVID, and this new Generation Z, who aren't so socially together. They're all gaming online, talking to each other. What advice would you give to help build their confidence to be more social?
Yeah, I think the first relationship we have is our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think we need to probably learn how to be with ourselves. If we can be with ourselves, we can be with anyone. And I think it can be really difficult actually to be with ourselves. If you imagine just sitting with yourself for a day, right? I mean, many of us, after 20 minutes, we're going to get quite fed up, quite bored, like, oh my God. But can we honour ourselves? Can we be with ourselves and actually be a friend to ourselves and love ourselves as we would our best friend, or, you know, that love and support we want to give a friend, would you give it to yourself? A lot of people say, actually, I don't really do that.
Are you kind to yourself? Yeah.
Can you accept that you've done absolutely nothing productive in a day?
Yeah.
Can you accept that you just, because it's nothing wrong with that, because that's how you are because of a reason or reasons.
Right. So in accepting your feelings, whether you're in a dark place or in a good place or outgrown certain friends, just to be able to sit well enough with that builds your confidence and you're able to actually be better in a social setting. Is that what we're saying?
I think so, because then we're comfortable with ourselves. We're only uncomfortable with ourselves if we feel there's something wrong that we need to change. And you know, maybe we don't need to change anything. Maybe we'd like to feel more comfortable or more peaceful or more, there's things we can improve and bring more pleasant things into our life. But by saying, well, actually right here, where I am right this minute is okay. And that's just where I am.
What we're saying is that in order to build upon your confidence in a social setting, if you're an introvert or someone who's quite anxious, you've really got to learn more about yourself and love yourself, because then you can be comfortable with yourself in those social settings. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's difficult during COVID where people are just working from home. They're not practicing those social skills with other people or the Gen Z kids. But actually, let's take a step back. We'll start with the relationship with ourselves first.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Claire, thank you so much for coming on today. I just have a couple more questions to ask. What's the most common barrier to confidence that you see in your clients?
Yeah. I think it's self-doubt. I think a lot of people just cannot trust themselves and be okay with themselves. It's almost like this sense that so much has got to be changed. So much is wrong. Obviously, if they were confident and didn't have self-doubt, they may not come to counselling in the first place or therapy in the first place. But often it's this sense that who I am is wrong in some way, or, you know, this has happened to me and it shouldn't have happened to me, or how can I stop feeling like this? Whereas if we can be with who we are in however messy it is in that moment, and just kind of with more of a curiosity and acceptance, then we can sort of be with ourselves more easily, and there's less battle, if you want, within ourselves.
Well, I can resonate with that. I was in therapy a year ago and learned a lot of things about myself. But I remember being an achiever like I am, I became the project. And I was on a very quick journey to understand, you know, what's going on here. But it did start with self-doubt. And it did start with actually not even looking inside myself, sort of looking at the world around me, like, who is it that's causing all these problems and issues in my life? Once that was cleared through, I was really then concentrating on myself and who I am and sitting with myself and looking past the self-doubt, the fear, or the guilt, or the shame. But yes, I agree. And that was my block to confidence. So yes, I can resonate with that too.
I remember reading this wonderful quote once, and I didn't get it for ages. Is, we see the world as we are, not how it is. We don't see the world how it is. We see the world how we are. And that was like mind-blowing for me, just to realise actually it's subjective.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that leads us on to the last question. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice about confidence, what would it be?
I just give myself a hug, a big,
That's
big,
brilliant.
big,
Yes.
big, big hug. No advice needed.
No advice needed. That's absolutely brilliant. Just reach into the past and give yourself a hug. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Claire. It's been brilliant. And thank you guys for watching. And please subscribe for the next episode, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.